A new study from Michigan State University found that girls who eat a high-fat diet during puberty may be at greater risk of developing breast cancer later in life, even those who do not become overweight or obese. But too little fat can trigger a number of other health risks, including depression and even heart disease. So here to help us understand how to strike the best balance is our resident food coach and registered dietitian, Cynthia Sass.
Hello.
Cynthia, great to see you.
You too, thank you.
So tell us a little bit more about this study and the link that it found between fat and breast cancer.
Well, the research is preliminary. It's animal research and it's still ongoing. But what the researchers have found so far is that having a high-fat diet during puberty created inflammation in the mammary glands during adulthood, which may be related to the proliferation of breast cancer. So we want to kind of get the right balance here.
Absolutely. And did the study look at all types of fat?
It did. However, because we don't want to cut our fat too low, it's really important to focus on the quality of the fat in your diet as well as the quantity.
Absolutely, because it is essential that we get fat in our diets, right?
Yes, fat is one of the primary building blocks of the body, so we need a steady stream of fat in our diet in order to repair and regenerate our cells. We also need fat to absorb certain vitamins and antioxidants, which are really critical for our health. We also need fat to reduce inflammation in the body, if it's the right kind of fat, that is.
That's right.
And also, 60% of our brain is made out of fat.
So the key is distinguishing the right kinds of fat, correct?
Yes, and they're not all created equal. Trans fat is really the bad guy. That's the one we want to avoid. Another recent study that was in 25,000 women found that those who had the highest blood levels of trans fat had twice the risk of developing breast cancer compared to those who had the lowest blood levels. So
give us some examples of foods that contain a lot of trans fat.
Fortunately, we can avoid it because it's in processed and packaged foods and fried fast foods, which we're all trying to hopefully eat less of. But you really do need to read the ingredient list whenever you buy a packaged food, because if you see the words partially hydrogenated oil in the ingredient list,
that's a trans fat.
That's trans fat. That's man-made trans fat, and that means that that food has some trans fat, even if the label states 0, because the labeling laws allow a food that has less than half a gram of trans fat per serving to say 0. So always scope out that ingredient list and try to avoid those specifically.
Very important. Now tell us about the fats that are good for us, or mixed even.
Well, there's 3 more types of fats in the diet besides trans fats. We have saturated fat, we have monounsaturated fat, also MUFA for short, and then we have polyunsaturated fat, which is PUFA for short. So the saturated fat, traditionally we've been thinking of those as not so good for us, especially when they come from animal foods like butter, fatty meats, you know, the grizzle, you know, that marbling.
The yummy part.
Right. Now, we've seen a lot of research that shows that those saturated fats from animal foods tend to increase the risk of heart disease by increasing the lousy LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, and reducing the happy or good HDL cholesterol. So we've been thinking that we should try to avoid those. However, newer research finds that the plant-based saturated fats, especially from coconut oil and from cocoa, so dark chocolate, which is made with cocoa, are actually heart healthy. So we can include more of those. I mean, I use coconut oil for stir fries. I also use it in baking. And of course, we've heard so much about dark chocolate.
So is the distinction then the saturated fats that come from plants?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's really the key there. So not all saturated fat's bad.
But all saturated fat related to animal products, we should generally stay away
Generally try to reduce. And I definitely think it's better to have less processed, like real butter, I think would definitely be better than, say, a margarine. Now that brings us to our next level. Here is monounsaturated fat. Now these are found mostly in plant foods in an all-natural form. So almonds or other nuts, extra virgin olive oil and olives, beautiful avocado here.
Lovely.
These are pretty much all good. They tend to reduce inflammation in the body. They've been associated with a lower risk of nearly everything from obesity to breast cancer to heart disease. They keep the arteries nice and soft and flexible. So we definitely want to include these as much as we can.
Is there a limit?
There's always a limit because of calories.
Right,
you know, calories unfortunately do get turned into fat if we can't burn them or use them, even when they come from these healthy foods. So it's all about including smaller quantities of these, thinking them as an accent to a meal.
Now, what about dairy fats? I just want to ask you quickly. Are they generally saturated fats?
Yes, they generally are. So if you think about when we were you know, we can talk about our grandparents. When the milk got delivered to your house, the fat was usually separated from the milk and it would rise to the top. And that's what they make butter and sour cream and, you know, cream cheese and things like that out of. The harder and more solid they are, generally, the more saturated they are.
So do these dairy fats like cheese and butter, do they fall under the category of saturated fats we should stay away from, or that we should work into our diet?
Or eat less of.
Eat less of, okay.
So you really want to go, the bottom line really is plants. Now the only exception to that would be in the polyunsaturated fat category. The sort of rock star fat there is omega-3 fatty acids, and that comes from fatty fish like salmon or fish oil, or an algae derived source, which is where fish actually get their omega-3s from. They get it from algae. So if you don't eat fish or you can't eat fish, you can take a fish oil that's been, or an omega-3 oil that's been created with algae.
Now this corn oil is so-so, while the olive oil is great?
Yeah, now here's the thing here. The polyunsaturated fat category includes the good omega-3s, but also omega-6s, and that corn oil is an example of an omega-6. Now, both omega-3s and omega-6 are essential in the body. We need them, but unfortunately, we're getting way too much omega-6 and not enough omega-3, and that imbalance increases inflammation in our body, which we know is now a trigger for diseases like breast cancer and premature aging. So we want to have more omega-3s, less omega-6s, and a lot more of these monounsaturated fats.
So if you're choosing between cooking oils, between corn and olive, you say go with the olive.
Definitely. I even bake with olive oil.
Really?
You can definitely use it in pretty much any recipe.
So in general, we can't go wrong here. Just keep these two fats in moderation.
And we want to do things like on toast in the morning, spread it with avocado or natural peanut butter or almond butter instead of regular butter. When you have a sandwich, instead of putting mayo on it, put some avocado in there. You know, ways of using the plant-based fats and less of the animal-based fats is generally the way to go, the only exception being fish.
Fantastic, Cynthia Sass. Thank you so much for all this great information. And don't forget, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search ABC News Now.